Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling something that, on the surface might seem a little dry,
Yeah.
a legal agreement. But trust me, folks, this one's a page turner,
All right.
at least for anyone who's ever kind of wondered how all the things that they buy actually make it to their doorstep.
I like that.
We're diving into the broker-carrier agreement,
Yeah.
the contract that really underpins the entire trucking industry.
The backbone.
Yeah, and we're using a best practices agreement as our guide today.
Okay.
And this document is packed with details about the roles and responsibilities,
Absolutely.
and even potential pitfalls of the broker-carrier relationship.
For sure.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty,
Okay.
let's set the stage.
All right.
Imagine you're a company and you need to ship a product.
Okay.
You might not have your own fleet of trucks,
Right.
so you turn to a broker.
Exactly. The broker acts as that middleman connecting the shippers with the carriers who have the capacity and the equipment to actually move that freight.
It's like a matchmaking service.
It is a matchmaking service for the logistics world.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
And this agreement that we're going to be kind of dissecting today, it's
Yeah.
the rule book for that match made in trucking heaven.
I love it.
It outlines a one-year partnership
Okay.
with the possibility of automatic renewal.
Okay.
And of course, either party can kind of back out with a 30-day notice. As
Right.
long as all balances are settled,
Makes sense.
that flexibility is key
Oh, for sure.
in an industry where demand can fluctuate.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Right?
The trucking industry is so dynamic. Think about things like seasonal shifts in consumer demand.
Oh, yeah.
Unexpected disruptions in supply chains, or even weather events that could totally throw things off.
Like a hurricane.
Exactly. This agreement needs to allow for that inherent uncertainty
Yeah.
while still providing a solid framework for the relationship.
Yeah, it's like a living document in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
Now let's get into the who's who of this operation. The agreement is very careful to define the roles of the broker and the carrier.
Right.
The broker, they're the facilitator. They're the ones making those
The
connections.
connector.
Yeah, they need to be licensed.
Mm-hmm.
They need to have a surety bond.
Sure.
Basically just proving they're legitimate. They're
Right.
financially stable. But here's the thing.
That's that.
They don't actually touch the cargo.
Right. The agreement goes so far as to explicitly state that the broker is not a carrier. They're not a motor carrier. They're not a freight forwarder. They're not a rail carrier.
So they're really operating purely in that realm of logistics.
Purely in the realm of logistics.
Connecting the dots.
Connecting the docks,
That-
leaving the actual transportation to the carrier.
Yeah.
And the carrier,
Mm-hmm.
they're the ones with the big rigs. They're the ones with the drivers and the muscle
Yeah, the muzzle.
to get those goods moving.
Right.
They have a whole laundry list of obligations in this agreement,
Okay.
including maintaining proper licensing insurance, a
Hmm.
good safety record.
And the agreement holds them fully responsible for the safe and timely transportation of that freight.
And that focus on responsibility is really at the heart of this agreement.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine a shipment gets damaged in transit, or even worse, there's an accident.
Yeah.
This document establishes a very clear chain of accountability.
Yeah.
It makes sure that the right party is held liable. It's all about managing risk in a complex and sometimes unpredictable industry.
For sure. Now things get even more interesting when we look at a specific section of the agreement, food transportation.
Okay.
Buckle up because the requirements here are strict.
Right.
We're talking sealed trailers, specially trained personnel, and a zero-tolerance policy for contamination.
Yeah, there's a good reason for that. Food safety is paramount. I mean, think about the potential consequences of a contaminated food shipment.
Oh,
It could lead to widespread illness, product recall, even lawsuits.
that's a nightmare.
Exactly. So this section of the agreement really highlights how seriously the industry takes its responsibility to protect public health.
Yeah, it really brings home the point that these agreements aren't just about legalese. They have real-world implications for everyone involved, the companies, the consumers, and ultimately our well-being.
Absolutely. And that attention to detail, that, to clearly defining those roles and responsibilities, it extends to other aspects of the agreement as well.
Oh, okay.
Like take, for instance, the fact that both the broker and the carrier are explicitly defined as independent contractors.
Why does that distinction matter?
It's a crucial legal distinction. It has significant consequences. It affects everything from, taxes and liability to how the parties interact with each other.
Interesting.
It's a key part of understanding the dynamics of that broker-carrier relationship.
So it's not just a semantic thing.
It's not just semantics.
Okay.
No, it has real legal teeth.
Oh,
Yeah.
And speaking of consequences, let's dive into one of the most critical aspects of this agreement.
Okay.
Liability.
Yeah.
After all, in the world of trucking,
All right.
things don't always go according to plan.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
This document lays out in no uncertain terms who is responsible if something goes wrong.
And there's one legal concept
Mm-hmm.
that kind of looms large in this section.
Okay.
The Carmack Amendment.
Yes.
Okay, I've heard of the Carmack Amendment,
Right.
but to be honest, it sounds a bit intimidating.
Okay.
Break it down for us.
Sure.
Why is it so important in this context?
The Carmack Amendment is a federal law that essentially puts the carrier on the hook for any loss or damage to the cargo during transportation.
So it's their responsibility.
It's their responsibility to make sure that those goods arrive at their destination safe and sound in the same condition as when they were picked up.
So if I'm a shipper
Okay.
and my shipment gets damaged en route, I can hold the carrier accountable under the Carmack Amendment.
Exactly. It gives you, the shipper, legal recourse if your goods are damaged.
So they can't just kind of shrug it off.
They can't just shrug off responsibility.
Oh,
no.
okay.
And this agreement reinforces that principle.
Okay, but there's more to it than just the Carmack Amendment, right?
Right.
This agreement also talks about indemnification.
Yes.
What's that all about?
Indemnification is a legal way of saying, if I mess up, I'll cover your losses.
Okay.
In this agreement, both the broker and the carrier agree to indemnify each other for any claims arising from their own actions or negligence.
So it's like a safety net.
It is like a safety net.
If the broker provides, faulty instructions that lead to a delay,
Yeah.
or if the carrier's driver causes an accident,
Mm-hmm.
they're responsible for covering the other party's losses.
Precisely. It ensures that each party takes responsibility for their own part of the process.
Okay.
It's about accountability and risk management.
Now let's talk about another important document that's mentioned in this agreement.
Okay.
The Bill of Lading.
Yes, the Bill of Lading.
It sounds like a key piece of the puzzle.
It is. The Bill of Lading is essentially the birth certificate of the shipment. It lays out all the essential details. Who's sending it, who's receiving it, what's inside, where it's going, even how much it weighs.
Wow.
And this agreement is very specific about who should be listed on this document.
What do you mean?
It explicitly states that the broker should not be listed as the carrier on the Bill of Lading.
Interesting.
This is crucial because it reinforces that broker's role as the arranger, not the actual transporter.
Right.
Remember that distinction between the broker and the carrier we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
This is where it really comes into play.
So it's all about maintaining those clear lines of responsibility.
Exactly. And speaking of clear lines, there's another fascinating detail related to the Bill of Lading, the double brokering clause.
Double brokering.
Double brokering.
That sounds, a bit shaky.
It can be. Double brokering is when a broker rebrokers a shipment without consent.
Without consent?
They basically pass it off to another broker or carrier without authorization from the original parties involved.
Oh, wow.
This clause in the agreement prohibits that practice.
Why is that so important?
It protects everyone involved. Think about it. If a shipment gets rebrokered without consent, you lose track of who's responsible.
Yeah, you lose that transparency.
You lose that transparency, exactly. There's no transparency. This clause safeguards against that.
Yeah.
It ensures that everyone's on the same page and that the shipment is handled according to, the agreed upon terms and conditions.
So it's a safeguard against someone going rogue with those goods.
Exactly.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about another section that caught my eye.
Right.
Non-solicitation of shippers.
Okay.
What's that all about?
This clause is designed to protect the broker's business relationships. It essentially says that the carrier, once they've worked with the shipper through this agreement, can't go around the broker and try to work with that shipper directly.
Oh, so they can't just poach them.
They can't poach them. There's a specific time period, usually 2 years,
Okay.
where they're prohibited from doing that.
So it's like a cooling off period.
It's like a cooling off period.
Yeah.
The broker invested time and effort in building that relationship with the shipper. This clause protects that investment and makes sure that the broker isn't cut out of the equation.
Makes sense. Now let's talk about something that feels absolutely crucial in the trucking industry.
What's that?
Insurance.
Yes.
This agreement goes into a lot of detail about insurance requirements for the carrier.
Rightfully so. The risks involved in transporting goods across the country are significant.
Oh, yeah.
Accidents can happen, cargo can be damaged, legal claims can arise.
For sure.
This section is all about mitigating those risks.
So what kind of insurance are we talking about?
It's a comprehensive package. The agreement specifies requirements for general liability insurance, auto liability insurance with higher limits if they're hauling hazardous materials,
Oh, right.
cargo insurance, and workers' compensation insurance.
Got it.
And there's one detail that I find particularly interesting.
Okay, what's that?
It requires cargo insurance to cover refrigeration breakdown if the carrier is hauling refrigerated goods.
Oh, that's a good one.
It is. It's
Yeah.
a great example of how this agreement anticipates specific needs and potential problems.
Yeah, they've really thought of everything.
Well, they've certainly tried. And there's another clause that you often see in legal agreements, like this one force majeure.
Ooh, force majeure.
Force majeure.
That sounds powerful.
It is in a way. It's a French term that basically means superior force.
Okay.
In legal terms, it refers to events outside of anyone's control that might prevent a party from fulfilling their obligations under a contract.
So like a natural disaster.
Like a natural disaster, war, or even, a large-scale riot.
So it's like a get-out-of-jail-free card for unforeseen circumstances?
In a way, yes. It
Yeah.
protects both the broker and carrier from being held liable for delays or non-performance if something completely out of their control happens.
That makes sense. Now we're getting towards the end of this agreement, and there's a section about choice of law and venue.
Yes.
What's the significance of that?
This is a common provision in legal agreements. It basically establishes which state's laws will govern the contract and where any legal disputes will be resolved.
So it's about setting the ground rules for any potential legal battles.
Exactly. It's typically chosen based on factors like where the parties are located or where the majority of the business is conducted.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I see we have one last section to cover.
Sure.
Indemnification.
Yes, indemnification.
Didn't we already talk about this?
We did touch on it earlier, but this section goes a bit deeper into the specifics of the carrier's obligations.
Okay.
It reiterates that they're responsible for covering the broker's losses for a wide range of potential claims, even if those claims exceed the carrier's insurance coverage.
Wow. That's a pretty significant responsibility.
It is. The section really emphasizes the importance of the carrier's role and their potential liability in this whole arrangement.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even though the broker arranges the shipment, the carrier is ultimately the one on the road facing those risks and potential consequences.
So this agreement that we've been looking at, it's labeled as a best practices agreement. What does that actually mean, like in this context?
Well, best practices suggest that this agreement incorporates industry standards
Okay.
and widely accepted legal principles. It's like a blueprint that reflects the collective wisdom of the industry,
Okay.
a signal that the parties involved have taken care to draft a comprehensive and legally sound document.
So it's like a gold standard for this type of agreement.
You could say that.
Yeah.
It's a really solid foundation for any broker and carrier
Okay.
who are looking to establish a clear and legally binding partnership.
Right.
And for anyone who's ever wondered, how the goods they order online actually make it to their doorstep,
Right.
this agreement offers a fascinating glimpse into that intricate world of logistics.
It really does. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From defining roles and responsibilities to unpacking these complex legal concepts like indemnification and force majeure.
Yeah, those are big words,
Yeah.
but important concepts.
What's the one key takeaway you want our listener to walk away with?
The next time you see a truck on the highway
Yeah.
or you receive a package,
Yeah.
just take a moment to appreciate that intricate web of agreements and regulations
Right.
that made that journey possible.
Yeah.
This deep dive into the broker-carrier agreement has revealed a behind-the-scenes world of logistics
Yeah.
with its own set of rules, its safeguards,
Uh-huh.
and carefully negotiated terms.
It's so easy to just take these everyday occurrences for granted.
It really is.
But, as we've seen today, there's a whole universe of logistics and legal frameworks working behind the scenes.
Yeah, behind the scenes.
To make it all happen.
To make it all happen.
Well, a huge thanks to our expert
Oh, thank you.
for guiding us through this fascinating deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
And to you, dear listener, we hope you've gained a new appreciation for the complexity and the importance of the trucking industry.
I second that.
Until next time, keep those minds curious.